Okay, I think today I'm going to talk about the Chaotica Megaverse. And what to start with? First, why would I call it the Megaverse? Why not the Chaotica Universe? Like we talk about the Marvel Universe or the Warhammer Universe. I'll use those as examples here, kind of for comparison. The reason is that those universes, most fictional universes, have specific characters who have names. There are places in those universes. There's common references that you can look at for things that define those universes. Main characters, names of places, events, timelines. Those universes have those things. The Chaotica Megaverse, and I call it a Megaverse because Chaotica is an engine that creates different fantasy or science fiction universes, different sci-fi and fantasy settings, and because it creates different settings, you can't say throughout all of them, well, do vampires exist in this world, or does magic exist? How does the magic work? There are lots of things that will vary from one universe to another, from one setting to another. And because of that, the Chaotica Megaverse is a collection of possible realities. And you could see them as being kind of connected since they're all created by the same system, same spreadsheet, I guess, if you want to get all meta. But we can talk about metagaming later, which is part of this, actually. The Chaotica Megaverse has certain common things that all the different stories it can generate have in common. There are certain universal constants and themes. That's just based off the nature of having a spreadsheet that creates certain things. They're populated by the same possible animals, same possible events, and they mash together in ways that then the narrator interprets and brings together with characters and players. Some of those universal constants and recurring themes are magic and magic systems, the possibility and presence of gods, and extraplanar beings, you can call them demons and angels, whatever, that can move from one universe to another, or one setting to another. Regarding magic and magic systems, there are at least... I have a base set of 12 different magics, and sometimes each one is... like, they're all present in some settings. Others, none of them are present, and I would use technology or other systems to represent magical or quasi-magical effects. I guess I could go over what the 12 magics are. I have them split into 6 opposing pairs. Usually the more common ones tend to be chanting and conjuration. Those are the 2 opposing pairs where conjuration is about creating matter, creating stuff. And chanting is about modifying abilities and increasing or decreasing abilities. Yeah. Next, then, I believe is force and mind magic, where you have things like telekinesis. You can basically force. It pushes things. It moves stuff around. And the opposite there is mind. It's based off of perceptions, illusions, and telepathy, communicating at long range, things like that. There's a lot more details I have for each of these, but this is just a quick overview. Then we have things like life and death. Fairly obvious. Most fantasy settings have some kind of life or nature-based magic and a necromancy or death-based magic, things like that. Of course, opposite each other. And there are some subtle rules for how each one works, but those rules themselves may vary from setting to setting. So that's worth considering. Next, you have light and dark magic. Light and dark are fairly natural opposites for settings like this. and they have expansions and planes. The others do as well, though some are more developed than others. I might get into that. Well, yeah. Then you get into more of the core magic types for Chaotica, which we'll discuss this later, but those are Chaos and Fate. Chaos and Fate, well, Chaos is adding more dice rolls and having more chaos. It's really great for if you want an effect right now, even if you have no idea what that effect is going to be. The opposite is Fate, which is almost, you could say, storytelling magic. Fate magic is all about understanding tropes and storytelling, and being able to use kind of the power of storytelling in the game setting. It's quite meta, but that's part of what makes it really fun. And it's quite the opposite of Chaos magic in that Chaos magic is good for getting an immediate effect, and then you have no idea what the effect is going to be, but you get something right now. Fate is the opposite in that you generally don't get anything right now, but something is going to come down the line that kind of steers in the direction that you are pointing it to. The whole thing, it's like if you're walking with a group of adventurers and your character starts narrating to himself, and the adventurers walked down the spiral staircase but didn't realize they were being watched, and of course your other teammates are like, hey, don't do that, and of course because you did that as a Fate mage, you cause something to appear in the darkness that's now watching you, or you will cause something to soon appear in the darkness that will soon be watching you. Generally, it's waiting for the opportunity to arise. So if you say, just as Fate magic, submarine, and you're in the middle of a forest, a submarine won't just pop out of the sky, but next time you reach a body of water, there could plausibly be a submarine in. You'll probably find one. Things like that. So that the Fate and Chaos are fun to play with. And the last two are Balance and Power, which typically you could look at as kind of good and evil magic, but Chaotica is a bit more nuanced than that when it comes to things like good and evil. I can explain more of the details later, but Balance is about getting power by gaining the trust of reality, the universe, and whatever is around you, and getting reality to trust you and want to help you. And power is about taking, power by intimidating reality into obeying you, and things like that. Those are the 12 magic systems. Not all of them will exist in every world, and the ways in which they are used will vary from world to world. So that is constant, some of the universal constants in Chaotica worlds. Another interesting one is the mention of angels, demons, gods, things like the super powerful beings. Generally, angels and demons are any being that exists outside of the reality of that game you're currently playing, outside of that story. So they can have bits and pieces of themselves coming into your world, but they themselves exist outside of it. And they are often considered realms unto themselves. So you can, when you meet a piece of an angel or demon, it might look like a person, it might look like some weird, indescribable object, it might just be a voice in the wind. It could be a bunch of things. And in that sense, you could say that gods are any individual, they're just people who've been in school longer than the rest of us, so to speak. They are people who have ascended beyond the limitations of that particular reality and can kind of walk past those barriers, which is a good way to end a game. And generally speaking, if someone reaches that kind of maximum level, then usually they will, that level of power will attract other beings of similar power who will work to conclude that story one way or another. It's a good way to retire successful characters. And then, of course, we have recurring paradigms. There are a variety of different kind of settings that can make the story, the world, kind of interesting. A lot of these are things like the way magic is used, the kind of the cost the cost of magic in different circumstances, different types of settings like, mimetic magic, for instance, where magic is very common, it's everywhere, it easily spreads to people, and the consequences of having mimetic magic. One of the common settings in Chaotica is the Sea of Chaos, where you have no stable map, but just everything changes. If you walk for a kilometer in any direction and then come back again, the place you left will no longer be there and it will be something else. There's a variety of different ways that this can happen. This is often one of the ways that worlds begin in Chaotica worlds with the lore. You have the Sea of Chaos, you have active gods, you have worlds without gods, you have various kinds of monsters and titans and things that are always in the light, so civilization has to be in the dark, or always in the dark, so civilization always has to have light, and things like that. There's several different settings that I have, and I'm always adding others, so that's fun to play with. I guess the last thing to kind of conclude with this is the story and metagaming there, because a big part of Chaotica is recognizing that you are building a story using random numbers, and that's where kind of the chaos and fate elements come back into it again. That's there is a lot of metagaming is encouraged to a large extent because you are creating a story together with other people, and embracing chaos in bringing in elements created through random numbers is encouraged. And embracing storytelling tropes is also encouraged, where you can tell the story together and you recognize that the story itself is part of reality, that reality in that setting is the creation of a story, and that's what makes the story. Metagaming in Chaotica is about realizing that you are telling a story together and that you build a world by building it with those story elements, where you have characters that have progression, events that change nations and change game-changing things, where you can make things that change the nature of magic or change the paradigms that have defined that world, and that's part of the big fun thing with Chaotica, is that you are creating a story together and you have a chance to make characters that are powerful enough that they can change the world and make it different ways, or stop it from being made that way by other characters, and that escalates with power as the game continues. And of course you can maintain a game that keeps things at a low level of power and keeps the story smaller, or you can just let it keep going until you break the world and start over again. And I've done both, and they can both be satisfying. And I guess that's part of also the fun of Chaotica, is recognizing what it is that makes a story satisfying, and understanding that the setting itself is about storytelling, and storytelling is a real power within that setting. You have chaos and fate magic that is kind of a constant in every world, maybe not as a magic system, but as part of the nature of reality itself. You have things like chaos and fate working together, where you have the random numbers to guide the story when you're not sure what tropes you want to use, and you have yourself and the other players that you want to use those tropes and evoke them to make a satisfying story. And that ultimately is what is the most fun about Chaotica, is that you are creating a story together, and the act of creating a story is integral to the system itself. And I am looking for more people, as always. Thank you for listening if you made it this far, and I hope to be uploading soon an actual story I'm making with Chaotica that you can follow along and maybe even guide in the comments. So I look forward to making a story with you soon.